Alright, so let's start now. So, किस चीज़ का? हैकाथॉन जो खत्म हो गया उसका या फिर जो कब है? हो गया, ओके ओके, जीत भी गए, कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशन. Nice. So we'll start with natural language processing now. We'll not talk too much about the nuances of language itself, okay, but we'll mostly talk about the applications of deep learning using, language processing, or wherever you see, sequence to sequence kind of thing, okay. So what kind of examples could be sequence to sequence things? For example, speech recognition, okay. What happens in speech recognition? What will happen in case of speech recognition? So you are given speech, speech will be in the forms of, in the forms of wavelets, okay, whatever, and you are supposed to convert that to text, right. So this will be our input. This is the problem, this is the input, and this is the output. So speech recognition, you are given waveforms, okay, and then you are supposed to convert that to text. What else could be an example of sequence to sequence thing? So maybe it's not the right title, it should have been sequence models, but ठीक है. Yes. What else? Opposite of this, true, right? So opposite of that will be transcribe, transcription. In what happens in case of transcription? No, transcription is this, sorry. That will be text to speech, okay. So text to speech, TTS, you are given text and then you are supposed to convert that to speech. In fact, I should have done speech here, ये बनाने की क्या ज़रूरत थी, ठीक है. So, and how speech is represented, that we'll see later. Now what else? Sentiment classification. This is something, this used to be until a couple of years ago very famous projects for students, right? Sentiment classification. What happens in case of sentiment classification? What is it that you are given? So for example, paragraph, whatever text, so text is given to you and then you are supposed to, so you are supposed to sentiment classification, for example, so let's say you give 3 star, 4 star, so you basically think of it this way. There is a movie review, how many stars will you give? Okay. Another thing could be, this can have various forms, right? So you are given a piece of tweet and then you are supposed to compute whether it's a hate speech or not. That will also become sentiment classification. You are given some piece of text, you are supposed to find out whether the sentiment in that is negative or positive. That is also sentiment classification. So broadly the problem is this: you are given some text. Does it necessarily have to be text? Not really. You can also have an audio, for example. Video as well. Okay. So you are given some input which is important here is, if you see, all these inputs are sequence to sequence. We will see what does that mean. So you are given text, audio or video, and output is the sentiments. In this case, how many classes do we have? In this case, how many classes do we have? 5. But is it necessary to have 5? We know it's not. If it is just positive, negative, then maybe get rid of this. We will just talk about 0, 1, yes or no, right? And so on. So,
Suppose कि 4.5 star हुआ तो उसके लिए classes होनी चाहिए.
how will you make 4.5 star?
Half star and
So there is nothing that stops you from doing that, right? So if you want to have 4.5 stars, maybe you would like to have 9 classes, right? 0.5 each. I mean, not really needed, right? Nobody would have 4.5 stars, but in just in case you want to have, you can use your own trick. Linear regression, tell me one thing, whether you will do linear regression or classification. See, here you see classification. So you will do linear regression or classification. नाम में ही classification है ना, right? So you will have different classes, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. Let's say we are talking about movies and the review is just one word review, pathetic. Where will it go? Maybe 1 star. And wonderful, maybe goes to 5 star, not bad. Okay, the movie was good, maybe 4 star. Okay, and you can think of other, right? So you are given, and now I'll fall back to text, but it can be audio, it can be video as well. So I'll fall back to text now. You are given some piece of text and you are supposed to output the class, okay, the sentiment. Next, what other example could be there? Translation. In translation, you are given text, and again, so we are assuming text in source language, and you are supposed to output in, so you are supposed to output text in target language. More examples. So let's say, you know, this thing called video activity recognition. Input will be video and output will be classification or what? Is this a classification problem or what? Classification, right? Almost everything that we do is classification. And there can be a lot more, right? We will see as, so yes, named entity recognition. Now, named entity recognition, input is, again we will assume input is text and then output is entities. Okay. Now, if you want to do named entity recognition through older algorithms, it's a completely different problem. In today's world, you don't need any of that. Okay. You might have studied a lot about this in your NLP course. Yes or no? Named entity recognition. So, named entity recognition means, let's say, as Andrew Ng takes example, Harry Potter and Hermione Granger invented a new spell. So, what are named entities in this? Harry Potter is and a named entity? No. And then Hermione Granger. So, again Hermione Granger and what next? Invented a new spell. Is that a entity, named entity? No. But you can define on your own. So, for example, let us say if you are analyzing some contract documents and you might be interested in what things? Names of the parties, who are the parties to the contract, what else? Let us say you are also interested in dates, that wherever you see a date, I want to highlight that as well. So, in your example, even date becomes a named entity. Okay. Generally nouns, yes. So, the impression that this particular thing gives, see, in pre-deep learning era, you would make those Viterbi algorithms and all that. I don't exactly remember the names, but so their named entity recognition would mostly mean nouns, right? And all those things that are there in English, right? So you would like to classify those things, but in today's world you don't keep that. In today's world, all you need to do is prepare a data set with relevant labels, feed it into a deep neural network and let it do everything figure out for you. Okay. So, we won't restrict ourselves to the traditional NER, and it's not a hard problem, we'll see, and so on. There can be many more. Okay. Now, question here is, let's say we take example of named entity recognition, and let me take a sequence. So let's say Taj is in, I am talking about named entity recognition. First of all, why are we calling these things as sequences? See, we are calling these sequences because is in Taj Agra. Will that make sense? No. Sequence here because Taj comes first, then is comes next, in comes next, and Agra comes last. Okay. So, this sequence has some meaning. Similarly, let us talk about what is sequence in the rest of the things. What is sequence in this case? Sequence of waveforms. If you change them, will it be the same speech? No. So, that is important here. Okay. Otherwise, your output will change. So, your output depends on the sequence of the input. Similarly, text to speech. You have text and you want to output speech in the same order. Sentiment classification. So, by default, text is a sequential input, sequence kind of input. Okay. You write a paragraph, then first word of the paragraph, second word of the paragraph, and so on. So, text is sequence, audio is a sequence, video is a sequence of what? Frames, and so on. Okay. I don't get the question.
मतलब पूरे सेंटेंस में नहीं तो पूरे वो आपको बस हाईलाइट करके दीजिएगा आंसर में तो जर्नी ऑफ टेक्स्ट
No, see the question, okay, that's a good question, but the problem here is just this. See, will you give, even to named entity recognition, will you give a random text as input, or will you give piece of a language, right? Because if you have not written things well, so for example, if your statement in whatever contract is, in is Agra Taj, right? So even if it is written somewhere, it does not make sense. So even if you might be able to figure out that Agra is name, Taj is name, but this whole exercise in itself does not serve much purpose, right? Unless let's say you want to say somebody has written this particular agreement whose English is not, so whose English is, he or she is not good at English. In that case, let's say you still want to figure out what are the entities. Maybe this is the use case where even though things are not written properly, but you would like to find out. So you can always find out a case, but in general a sequence means well written sequence of words. It can be Hindi, it can be English, whichever language. Okay. More questions here. So we will take this particular problem. What is this? NER. So I want to do NER. What is the full form of NER? Named entity recognition. I want to prepare the training data set. How will I do it? How will you prepare the training data set for this? Yes. Tagging, how will you do it? जैसे for example, okay. Right now I just want to say named entity or not. So right now to me, let's say only let's keep our things simple. So name, place, okay, and so name, that means proper noun, and place, let's say for us only those two things are named entities right now, and I want you to give me the training data set for this.
Every word will have label if it is any or not.
Every word will have,
Or we will tag it, it is any or not. So first word is any or, second is not, third is not, fourth word is any.
right. So this is named entity, my output will be, so 1, 0, 0, 1. This is my input sequence and this is my output sequence. Does output always have to be sequential? Does output always have to be a sequence? Can you give me one counter example? So we just saw sentiment classification, right? Your output is not a sequence, but it output a sequence in this case? In case of translation, output is a sequence. So sequence modeling is a much richer problem. Output may be sequence, may not be sequence, but input will always be sequence. Okay. Now, how do I solve this problem using neural networks? Is this a binary classification problem or what? Binary classification, right? For every word I will say either 1 or 0. So this is a binary classification problem. Help me make a neural network. I won't be able to do it without you. Yes. help me make a neural network, however small. So we right now don't bother about what will be the accuracy. Even if you give me something with 3 parameters, that is fine. Yes. जितना न्यूरल नेटवर्क पढ़ चुके हो ना, कुछ तो बोलो. Four inputs will be there? Yes or no? Okay, 4 inputs will be there. So Taj is in Agra. Kindly also help me prepare how do I represent Taj, how do I represent is, how do I represent in, how do I represent Agra. Why I said computer vision is easy? Computer vision is super easy, at least for beginners of deep learning neural networks, because input is a image. Image is stored in computer as a matrix, and matrix is something that both deep learning and computers like a lot. So you never had to do anything there. What do you mean by Taj? How do I make my machine understand Taj? ASCII. That's a very nice. How do I represent Taj? भाई बताओ, कोई एक बार देखो. Okay, we'll come to embeddings, but what is ASCII representation of Taj? Capital T, small a, small j, whatever those numbers are. Okay, so you will have 3 bytes, you will have 2 bytes and so on, 2 bytes, 2 bytes and 4 bytes. What's good or bad with this? So एक बार बता दो मेरे को, how is T represented? एक बार open करो. What is the ASCII value for T? One six. Capital T is 16. I don't think so. 84. So capital T is 84. Small a is 97. 96. 97. Okay. J is 106. I am assuming they are right. Okay. Now, so all ASCII character means everything will be lesser than 256. Okay. So you can represent everything in 8 bytes. 0 to 255, you can represent everything in 8 bits. Okay. So you can represent Taj in ASCII form and so on. What's good or bad with this? You'll have to
set the size, like what each word will have maximum size.
Right. So for example, words like so I'm not looking for the industrialization. So I'm not looking for words that are the longest in English, but this is really long and a word that we really use normally. Okay. So how many bits, how many bytes will this take? 16? 17 or 16? 17. So this will take 17 bytes. Okay. But what will be the average length? 5. I'll take that. 5. Let's say 5 letters is the average length. So in that case, every word will be 5 bytes long. So storage wise we are okay. Okay, not that bad. What is the real issue with this ASCII representation? What is the problem with ASCII representation? This is a super easy question, everybody can answer.
The storage takes
Storage fixed नहीं है, we are saying we just don't care.
अभी bytes ही लोगे ना input में।
Hmm?
ये जो 3 bytes है, input में लोगे।
Exactly.
तो फिर किसी और 3 bytes का word लोगे तो उसकी भी 3 bytes लोगे।
Exactly. But they will certainly be different from this one.
स्टोर करेंगे तो डिफरेंशिएट नहीं करना है कि आप बेसिकली कौन से वर्ड की टाइप, जैसे 84T है तो हो सकता है कि 8 किसी और वर्ड की ASCII हो।
ऐसे break
See,
करते हैं आप।
Taj will be uniquely represented like this, and there will be no other word which will be represented like this. So uniqueness is maintained.
इसको स्टोर कैसे करेंगे कि ऐसे
You will store as you store right now when you type Taj.
सर आपको मैपिंग रखनी पड़ेगी ना फिर।
Which mapping?
T की मैपिंग 84 है, A की 97
मैंने उसको
That's what computer does all the time when you press a keystroke. In fact, it does something more.
compare
It stores in Unicode now and not ASCII.
टाइप कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ज़्यादा।
Which comparison?
लाइक सपोज दो वर्ड्स का मैं कंपैरिजन करूंगा यूनिक है तो
All right. So I'll leave this thing unanswered and I'll come back to my original question. This is my input to neural network. वापिस इधर आओ. This is my input to neural network. So what will be my input? I mean, how will I prepare this input given whatever you have said? So let me put Taj here. Huh. How do I prepare this as input to my neural network? This is supposed to be my x1. This is supposed to be my x2, x3, x4, and then let's say I have something like this. Right. So what's wrong with this? What will be my x1? Can anybody tell me? You've converted Taj to this.
so vector of the
Vector of these, help me figure out what will be that vector. So vector of 24 bits you mean, or vector of 3 bytes? So something like this.
yes
He doesn't like it already. Yes. 1 cross 3? You don't like 3 cross 1? I'll transpose it. Yes. What should be x1? This side? Right. So right now what we know is we are having issues. Whatever we had in normal, when you were doing deep neural networks, when we were talking about, for example, housing price prediction, right? Our features were very much clear. How many rooms, what is the area, how many kitchen, 40 feet road, 60 feet road, what are the longitude and latitude coordinates and so on. You had your x1, x2, x3 sorted out. When you started doing computer vision, x1, x2, x3, x4 inputs were, features were the pixel values, right? And we did not dispute that. That was a matrix. Everybody was happy with the matrix, including computer. Okay. So that was fine. Here we have a problem. Here, if you start representing Taj as these, what is the problem? Can you represent? Yes, you can represent. There is nobody that stops you from doing this. But does it carry any meaning? Right? So it does not carry any meaning. And there are other issues as well, because they are just representations, right? They were for typing. They were not there for using as an input to deep learning neural networks. And there are more issues. So we try to, what kind of inputs will machine like? Numbers or Taj itself? Numbers. So how do we convert this to vectors? One of you have already said one hot vectors. Yes. Yes. And assume our English vocabulary is really small. We have only 4 words in our vocabulary. Yes. So how will you represent? So let's say what we do is 0 for Taj, 0 for Taj, right?
चार वर्ड्स हैं लेकिन बहुत सारे वर्ड्स हैं ना फिर
Right.
वापस से सब कैलकुलेट नहीं करेंगे
So neural networks, for example, let's say if you want to represent Taj as okay, this is same as what you guys have said. And see, ideally what you should do is, so this is my representation. These are called one hot vectors. Why they are called one hot vectors?
For itself it is 1 and
Because there is 1 at exactly one place and everywhere else it is 0. Okay. What is wrong with this as well? Dekho, first of all, we did a bad choice. Taj, at least we should have at least sorted them lexicographically. So Agra should have been here, then in, then is, and then Taj.
Sir, but how will it make difference?
How will it make difference? Later when you will have, let's say, millions of English words in the vocabulary, right? And you start, so let's say you add a 5th word. Now adding a 5th word would mean, so if in my English, let's say I don't have these 4 words, I have one more word now called the. How will I incorporate that in my current vocabulary now? How will my one hot vectors look like? Yes? 5 cross 1. Okay? And then this guy will also get its place. Now, if you don't sort lexicographically, as such there is no problem. But you are kind of making a table here and you would like to have some structure in that table. You won't like to have that at random. So, if you have 1 million words and you don't sort them, it's okay for computer. Computer does not care. Machine learning, deep learning will not care. But as a person who are doing all these things, right, they would care, because if you want to interpret those things, looking at that table, always it will be a linear search in a million numbers. If you sort it lexicographically, your search will be binary search, much faster. What are issues with this? My statement remains the same. So let's say statement changes to the movie was bad. वैसे nobody says bad because है ना, कोई ना कोई adjective लगेगा, but ठीक है. Yes. What is the sentiment of this? Positive, negative, neutral? Negative. Okay. How do I represent this? One hot vectors again. The movie was good. How do I represent it now? One hot vectors again. Okay. How does my system know? See, my system should be able to figure out how to represent bad and how to represent good. And right now, if you see, this system has no way of letting me know whether, whether Taj is, so give me what will be the, so let me just do this. Let's say this is the representation of bad and let's say this is the representation of good. Is there anything here that tells me bad is opposite of good? Right? So what are these vectors? Can you tell me what are these vectors? These are basically, if I have, so each vector is representing a each one hot vector represents a dimension. Right? Remember, in our Cartesian coordinates, what is 1 0 0? Which direction? X axis. What is 0 1 0? Y axis. 0 0 1? Z axis, right? So all these things are representing axes in a very high dimensional vector space. Okay? If you have millions of words, how many vectors will you have? Millions of vectors. You are into a million dimensional vector space. Each vector is a different dimension. Tell me what will be the dot product of bad with good? What will be the dot product of in with is? What will be the dot product of any vector with any other vector except itself? 0. So dot product with itself will be 1 and it will be 0 for everyone else. Okay. So basically, if I talk about one hot vector, then if xi is one hot vector, xj is another, this will be 0 if, so if I is not equal to j, okay, whatever, I mean, and 1 if I is equal to j. So something of that sort. Okay. Are we interested in dot product of the word with itself? Not really. We are interested in dot. Why are we interested in dot product, by the way? Remember cosine similarity? What is cosine similarity? So you want to figure out how similar are two vectors, and here you see all the vectors are orthogonal to each other. Orthogonal means the dot products with everyone else is 0 except itself. Okay. And is there no relationship between bad and good, or there is a relationship? There is a very strong relationship between bad and good. They are opposite of each other. So that's a very strong relationship. For example, the movie was wonderful. Sorry, wonderful. The movie was awful. Now in this case, bad is similar to awful, good is similar to wonderful, bad is opposite of good, bad is opposite of wonderful, and so on. So in language, if you see, we have words because we want to have some semantics out of them. We want to understand what is going on. So if we just write words as one hot vectors, that serves one purpose, which is we are able to make maybe inputs for neural networks. Okay, but that won't give us, that won't capture the semantic information of the language. My question stays the same. How will I give input? Now that we have one hot vectors, assume we don't care too much about semantics right now. Right now all I am interested in is give input to this neural network. I know how is Taj represented now. Go and call this Taj again. Go and call this Agra again. So how do I input? Taj is now a 4 cross 1 vector. Taj is now a 4 cross 1 vector. 4 cross 1. 4 cross 1, 4 cross 1. How will my neural network work? What I want finally, what do I want here? We are doing NER. So let me repeat, बहुत कुछ हो गया है. Our input is Taj is in Agra. And if we are doing sentiment classification, positive, negative, what will I want here? 0 or 1. Right now we are saying we are doing NER. What will be my output? 1001. Super nice. And what is this? Is this a class? Vector. Okay, my bad. So output is 1001. You have done 3 months of deep learning. Tell me which kind of output does that fall in? Should I have a softmax if I want this? Because this neuron is just going to give me one number, one scalar. Right? So unless you challenge our previous understanding, I don't want this here. So what should I do here? Shall I make it 4 here? Yes? Alright, yes. Should it be fully connected? For the time being, let's keep it fully connected because that's what we know. So output here should be 1001. Is that right? How do I get this kind of output? I can easily get this. How can I easily get this? You don't need to do softmax here. Whatever your linear output was, just take sigma of that element wise. That will give you 1 for some, 0 for other. Right? So you have a way to do this. हाँ. Right? Okay, so I'll come back to that. I am still stuck here. 4 cross 1. What is my input size? Should I have 16 neurons or 4 neurons? I should have 16. बिल्कुल. Yes. Think over it. We'll talk about it after the break. हाँ, अभी तो इनकी अटेंडेंस ले रहा हूँ मैं बस।